Daniel was alone in his small workshop on the outskirts of the city. The room smelled of machine oil and warm metal. Tools of all kinds lay scattered across the tables, and wires curled like vines over the floor. He had been working for months on a device that could bend space and shorten travel between 2 points. It was only a prototype, not safe, not tested, and held together by more hope than science. That morning, he was determined to try again. He had already failed many times, but the thought of building something new kept him moving. Daniel adjusted the copper coils, checked the glowing energy cell, and wiped the sweat from his forehead. He spoke quietly to himself, telling his nerves to stay calm. This was only a small jump, just a few meters, and if it worked, he could dream bigger later. The device looked strange, almost like a tall metal frame with swirling lights in the center. He had taken ideas from old science books, from his own sketches, and from sleepless nights imagining the future. Daniel stepped into the center of the frame and placed his hand on the main control. He counted slowly. 1, 2, 3. The machine came alive with a deep hum. Blue light spun in circles, faster and faster, until it filled his vision. He felt the air grow heavy and warm. The floor seemed to tilt under him. A sharp burst of static jumped through the air, and before he could pull away, the world folded around him. There was no sound, no up or down. Daniel felt weightless. The blue light became white, and the warmth turned into a sudden cold. His body tingled as if every part of him was being stretched and pulled. Then, without warning, his feet hit solid ground again. But it was not his workshop. The air smelled different, fresh, yet mixed with something sweet, like flowers he had never known. The ground under his boots was smooth stone, polished so well that it shone like glass. Tall pillars rose around him, carved with symbols that pulsed with a faint light. The ceiling above was so high he could barely see it, but he noticed it shimmered as if made from crystal. Daniel turned in slow disbelief. Behind him stood 2 massive doors of silver metal, shut tightly. In front of him, a long path stretched toward a grand throne at the far end of the hall, and he was not alone. A group of tall figures stood along the walls, each wearing silver armor that glimmered under the strange lights. They held long spears that glowed at the tips, and their helmets hid their faces. The moment Daniel appeared, they stiffened, their weapons snapping into position. He could feel their eyes on him, even if he could not see them. At the end of the hall, on the raised throne, sat a figure unlike any he had ever seen. She was slender and tall, with skin the color of pale gold. A silver crown rested on her head, and her hair fell in soft waves that caught the light like strands of silk. Her eyes, bright as starlight, widened the moment they met his. Daniel's breath caught. She was clearly startled. The figure rose from the throne and stepped forward. Her gown was woven from threads that shimmered in shifting colors, and each step she took seemed measured and graceful. The guards tensed as she approached, but they did not move to stop her. Daniel realized his hands were still on the sides of the teleport frame, though the frame itself was gone. He swallowed hard, trying to find his voice. I don't know how I got here, he said, his words trembling. The tall woman stopped a few steps away. Her gaze swept over him from head to toe as if weighing his very existence. Then she spoke, her voice clear and calm, but carrying a note of disbelief. No human has ever stood in this hall. How did you cross the royal barrier? The words made his mind race. Royal barrier. Hall. He had no idea where he was, and yet everything around him looked real, solid, and alive. I was in my workshop, Daniel explained quickly. I was testing a machine. Something went wrong, and I ended up here. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Impossible. No machine from your world could pierce our defenses. You appeared in the heart of the Starwind throne itself. That is not an accident. Daniel raised his hands slowly. showing he meant no harm. "I promise I'm not here to cause trouble. I didn't even know this place existed." The guards shifted, their glowing spears catching the light. The air in the hall grew tense, as if one wrong move would spark a fight. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. He had read stories about first contact, about peaceful meetings and hostile misunderstandings. Right now, he was living one of them. "The woman tilted her head slightly. "Your arrival has disturbed the ancient wards. Look." Daniel followed her gaze. Around the floor where he stood, the glowing symbols had grown brighter, their light pulsing like a heartbeat. The color shifted from pale blue to a deep, steady gold. "This has not happened in hundreds of years," she said quietly, as if speaking to herself. Then louder, "Perhaps you are more than you seem." Daniel opened his mouth to reply, but a sudden sound echoed through the hall, a low, resonating hum that seemed to come from the very walls. The symbols brightened even more, and for a moment, Daniel felt the same strange pull as when he had been teleported. The woman turned to the guards. "Hold your ground. Do not harm him." Then, looking back at Daniel, she said, "You will come with me. We will find the truth of your arrival." Before Daniel could decide if that was good or bad, two guards stepped forward, their weapons lowered but still ready. The woman gestured toward a side door carved with the same glowing patterns. Daniel hesitated, glancing back at the massive silver doors he had first seen. They were still shut, sealing him inside this strange place. His instincts told him he had no real choice. He nodded once. "All right, I'll come." The woman's eyes stayed on him for a moment longer before she turned and began to walk. The guards fell in around him, their armor whispering with each step. Daniel followed, his mind still spinning. Hours ago, he had been in a cluttered workshop, surrounded by tools and blueprints. Now he was walking through a hall of crystal and gold, following a woman who looked like she had stepped out of another world. Somewhere deep inside, fear and wonder fought for space in his thoughts. He didn't know where he was, why the symbols had reacted to him, or what the words Starwind, throne, truly meant. But one thing was certain, his life had just changed forever. The side door opened with a smooth hiss, revealing a smaller chamber lit by gentle white light. The walls were made of the same crystal-like material as the throne room, but here they were covered in silver lines that formed strange patterns. The air felt warm and calm, almost like it had been shaped to keep tension away. Daniel stepped inside, still surrounded by two guards. Their armor reflected the light, making them seem like moving statues. The tall woman who had spoken to him, clearly the princess, entered last. As the door closed behind her, the faint hum of the hall outside faded into silence. For a moment, she studied him without speaking. Her gaze was steady but not unkind. "I am Princess Aria of the Starwind." "Dominion," she said at last. "You have entered my throne room without warning, and yet the royal wards chose not to destroy you. This is a matter of great importance." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "I told you. I didn't mean to come here. I was working on a machine back on Earth. It's not even finished. It must have sent me here by accident." "Earth," she repeated softly, as if tasting the word. "The blue world in the outer spiral. We have records of it, but no one from your kind has ever stood before us." Daniel gave a small nod. "I believe that. I've never met anyone from another planet before today." Arya's eyes narrowed, slightly. "Do you realize where you appeared? The Starwind throne is the most secure place in the Dominion. Even our own fleet captains cannot enter without my command. Yet you arrived inside it, alive and unharmed." Daniel glanced at the glowing lines on the walls. Maybe it was some kind of mistake, in the machine. Or maybe it reacted to whatever power your throne room has. At this, one of the guards spoke for the first time. His voice was deep and calm. No mistake could do this. Only someone chosen by the ancient bond could pass through the barrier. Daniel looked from the guard back to Arya. Chosen? What does that mean? The princess walked slowly around him, her steps silent against the smooth floor. Long before my time, our people forged a pact with an unknown traveler from beyond the stars. That traveler was not from our worlds, but their arrival brought peace to the Dominion. The pact was sealed into the royal wards, and it was said that if danger ever threatened our realm again, a being from the same distant bloodline would appear, uncalled. Daniel frowned. Are you saying I'm connected to that traveler? That's impossible. I don't even know who they were. Impossible or not, the wards recognized you, Arya replied. When you appeared, the floor in the throne room lit with the golden mark of the pact. That light has not been seen for hundreds of years. The word sent a shiver through Daniel. He had come here by accident, but now it seemed like forces, far beyond his understanding, were at work. If that's true, then what happens now? Arya stopped in front of him. Now, we find out why you are here. There are signs of unrest in the Dominion. Fleets have gone missing along the border. Trade ships report strange shadows following them through the void. The timing of your arrival cannot be ignored. Daniel thought of his unfinished machine, the way it had flared before pulling him away from his world. Maybe I can help, but I need to understand what's going on first. And if possible, I'd like to find a way back home. Her expression softened just slightly. If you aid us, we will not keep you against your will. But your skills and your arrival may be the key to preventing a war. The door opened again, and another figure entered, an older alien with pale skin marked by faint silver lines, as if drawn with light. He wore a long robe and carried a small crystal tablet in his hands. Bowing to Arya, he spoke with deep respect. Princess, the council requests an audience. The golden wards have been seen by the court. Arya nodded. Tell them I will speak soon. She turned back to Daniel. This is Merak, our royal historian. He knows more about the ancient pact than anyone alive. Merak studied Daniel carefully, his eyes filled with quiet curiosity. You are the human who arrived in the heart of the throne? Then the prophecy has begun. Daniel gave a small laugh that held no humor. Everyone keeps talking about prophecy, but I'm just a man who builds machines. I'm not a hero? Merak smiled faintly. Perhaps neither was the first traveler, yet they changed the fate of our worlds. You may find that history has a way of choosing unlikely messengers. Arya stepped toward the door. Come, we will show you something few outsiders have ever seen. The guards fell into place, and Daniel followed them through a narrow corridor. The walls glowed with the same faint patterns, but here the light seemed to flow ahead of them, guiding their path. After several turns, they entered a round chamber with a high dome. In the center stood a pedestal of black stone, and above it floated a sphere of shifting light. This is the heart of the pact, Arya explained. It holds the memory of the first alliance between our people and the traveler. Place your hand near it. Daniel hesitated. Will it hurt? It will not harm you, she said firmly, but it will reveal if you are truly connected to the bond. Slowly, Daniel reached out. The sphere pulsed, and a warm wave of energy brushed against his fingers. Light rushed outward, filling the chamber with a golden glow. Images appeared in the air, a vast star field, a figure in strange armor standing beside an alien queen, fleets of ships flying together. Daniel pulled his hand back in shock, but the light faded on its own. Arya's voice was calm but serious. There is no doubt now. You are bound to the pact, and that means the shadow moving against us will soon reveal itself. Daniel's thoughts swirled. He had come here by mistake, but now it seemed he had been thrown into a struggle that crossed worlds. And somewhere deep inside, a part of him wondered if he would ever see Earth again. Daniel stood in the round chamber, still feeling the warmth from the glowing sphere fade from his fingertips. His heart was racing, not just from what he had seen, but from the weight of what it meant. Princess Arya's silver eyes studied him with quiet focus. You understand now why the guards and I reacted the way we did. Your arrival is not a small matter. It is a sign that something greater is at work. Daniel swallowed, keeping his voice steady. I understand more than I did before, but I still don't know why I'm here or what you expect me to do. The royal historian, Marak, stepped closer. The first traveler did not know why they were chosen either, but when the Dominion faced its darkest hour, they acted. Your presence tells us that the darkness is returning. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. If I can help, I will try. But I'm not a soldier or a leader. I build machines and fix broken things. That's all I know. Arya's expression softened just slightly. Perhaps that is exactly what we need. The trouble we face is not only in battle, but in understanding what is coming. Machines and old knowledge may be as important as ships and weapons. Before Daniel could respond, the chamber door opened. 2 guards entered, their posture rigid. One of them spoke quickly in the alien tongue Daniel could not understand. Arya's expression grew more serious as she listened. What is it? Daniel asked. A group of council members has gathered in the Hall of Voices, Arya explained. Some believe you are a gift from the pact. Others fear you may be a threat sent by our enemies. They demand to question you themselves. Daniel frowned. So they don't trust me? It is not in their nature to trust easily, Marak said. Especially not someone who appears in the most protected place in the Dominion without warning. Daniel took a slow breath. All right. Let's talk to them. I have nothing to hide. The princess gave a small nod. Remember, they will test your words. Speak with honesty. And hold your ground. The group left the chamber and walked through a long corridor that opened into a vast hall. The Hall of Voices was unlike anything Daniel had seen. Rows of seats rose in a wide circle around a central platform. The walls shimmered with moving light, and the ceiling looked like a window into open space, filled with stars and drifting clouds of color. On the platform stood a tall, thin alien wearing a robe of deep blue. His face was sharp, his eyes narrow, and his gaze followed Daniel with clear suspicion. Around him sat other members of the council, each wearing robes of different colors, each watching in silence. Arya led Daniel to the center of the platform. Honored council, this is Daniel of Earth, she said. The wards have marked him as the bonded one of the ancient pact. The man in blue stepped forward. Princess, the wards may react to trickery. The enemies of the Dominion have long sought to breach our walls. How do we know this human is not an agent sent to deceive us? Daniel spoke up before Arya could answer. If I were an enemy, I would not have walked here with my hands open. I told the princess the truth. I came here by accident when a machine I built malfunctioned. The man in blue gave a low hum. A convenient story. Your kind is not known for traveling among the stars. And yet, here you are. I'm not here to fight your people, Daniel said firmly. If I could go back home right now, I would. But if my being here can help you stop whatever danger is coming, then I'm willing to try. The council members murmured among themselves. One, a woman with green markings along her face, leaned forward. You speak as though you have already seen the shadow we face. Daniel shook his head. I haven't. But I've heard what the princess and Marak said about ships disappearing and shadows in space. On Earth, when something strange like that happens, it means trouble is coming fast. Another council member, older and wearing gold, spoke slowly. If you are truly tied to the pact, you will not run from what lies ahead. Daniel met his eyes. If I'm tied to this, then I'll face it. But I can't do it alone. Silence filled the hall for a moment before Arya spoke again. The human will remain under my protection. I will be responsible for his actions and his safety. The man in blue clearly disliked this, but did not argue further. Very well, Princess, but know this. If his presence brings harm to the Dominion, the Council will hold you accountable. Daniel could feel the tension in the room as the Council dismissed them. Arya led him back through the corridors, her steps quick and sure. When they reached a quieter passage, Daniel asked, "They really think I could be working for your enemies?" "They think of every possibility," Arya replied. "Our history has taught us to be careful, but some will believe in you once they see proof that you can help us," Daniel sighed. "Then I guess I need to find that proof." Mirak, walking behind them, spoke with a hint of approval. "The first traveler won the trust of the Dominion through deeds, not words. Perhaps you will do the same." As they returned to the smaller chamber, a sudden tremor shook the floor. The lights along the walls flickered. Arya's eyes narrowed. That came from the outer docks. A guard rushed in moments later. "Princess, an unknown vessel has appeared at the edge of the defense grid. It is not answering our signals." Arya turned to Daniel. "It seems you will have your first chance to prove yourself sooner than expected." Daniel's pulse quickened. He had no idea what was waiting out there, but the look in the princess's eyes told him one thing. This was no ordinary visitor. The floor trembled again, a low vibration that Daniel could feel through the soles of his boots. The walls of the chamber pulsed faintly, as if the entire palace was aware of the disturbance. Princess Arya gave a sharp command to the guards in her own language. They moved quickly, their silver armor flashing in the light as they formed a protective line by the door. "Come with me," Arya told Daniel. "If this vessel is connected to the shadow we have been sensing, I want you to see it for yourself." Daniel followed her through a series of curved corridors. The palace seemed alive with motion now. Servants moved aside as the guards passed, and the distant hum of the great defense systems echoed through the air. They reached a tall chamber with an open balcony. Beyond it lay the vast black of space, dotted with stars and colored clouds. Suspended high above the surface of the planet, the palace overlooked the docks where massive starships floated like silver giants. Daniel's gaze was drawn to the edge of the defense grid, a shimmering barrier of energy that curved across the distance like a wall of light. Just beyond it, a dark angular vessel hovered silently. Its surface was covered in jagged patterns, and faint red lights glowed along its edges. "It's not moving," Daniel said quietly. "No," Arya replied. "It is watching." Mirak arrived at their side, carrying a small crystal device. "Princess, the ship's design does not match any known fleet in our records. The energy signature is faint, almost hidden. This is not a trader or a lost civilian craft. It is here with purpose." One of the guards spoke quickly in the alien tongue, and Arya nodded grimly. "They have sent no response to our signals. The Council wishes to keep the palace on high alert." Daniel studied the strange ship. "Could they be the ones taking your ships, the ones behind these shadows?" "That is my fear," Arya said. Her eyes narrowed as she looked out at the vessel. "They may be testing our defenses or waiting for something." Mirak turned to Daniel. "The first traveler came to us during a time when enemies gathered in the dark, just as now. The prophecy speaks of this pattern repeating." Daniel faced him. "Tell me the prophecy. I need to understand it, not just hear bits and pieces." Mirak hesitated, glancing at Arya. She gave a small nod. "Tell him." The historian's voice lowered, steady, but heavy with meaning. "Long ago, Before the Dominion was united, the stars were divided by war. A shadow fleet rose, led by a power that could consume entire worlds. When hope was nearly lost, a traveler from a distant blue world appeared unbidden in the royal hall. That traveler carried no weapons, but they brought knowledge of strange machines and new ways to fight. Together with the queen of that time, they broke the enemy's power and sealed the peace with a pact. The wards of the throne were bound to that traveler's bloodline, so that if the shadow returned, one of their kind would cross the barrier again to stand with us. Daniel tried to take it all in. So you think I'm part of that bloodline? The wards believe it, Merak said simply, and the wards do not lie. Daniel looked back at the dark vessel. And this is the shadow returning. Arya's voice was calm, but her eyes told a different story. It may only be the beginning. If they are testing us, they will test again. And each time, they will grow bolder. A chime echoed through the balcony. One of the guards checked a wrist device and spoke to Arya. She nodded. They have scanned the palace, and now they are leaving. Daniel watched as the strange ship turned slowly, its jagged form gliding away into the darkness. Beyond the barrier, it did not vanish quickly. It left as if it wanted them to see, to know it could come and go freely. This was no random visit, Arya said. They wanted us to be aware of them. That is a warning. Merak placed a hand over the crystal device he carried. Then we must move quickly. The prophecy also warns that hesitation will bring defeat. Daniel took a step toward them. If I am part of this, then tell me how I can help. I'm not a fighter, but maybe there's something I can build. If they're using stealth to hide, they're ships. Maybe I can design something to detect them. Arya studied him for a moment. You may be able to do what our engineers cannot. The Shadow's technology is unlike ours. If your mind can see it differently, perhaps you can find a weakness. The princess turned to a guard. Prepare a small craft. We are going to the Vault of Echoes. Daniel raised an eyebrow. What's that? A place where we keep what remains of the first traveler's machines, Merak explained. It has been sealed for centuries, but with you here, it may open again. They left the balcony and descended through the palace until they reached a docking platform. A sleek silver shuttle waited there, its surface smooth and without visible seams. Daniel stepped inside, surprised by how quiet it was. The seats seemed to mold to his shape, and the walls glowed softly without any visible lights. The craft lifted away from the platform, gliding silently into the stars. Daniel watched the palace grow smaller behind them, its crystal spires catching the starlight. As they approached a cluster of small moons, Merak pointed to a black shape resting on one of them. The vault. It looked like a giant door built into the side of the moon, covered in strange symbols. The shuttle landed in a narrow bay, and the group stepped out into the still air of the structure. Before them stood a massive gate, tall as 3 men and carved with golden lines. At the center was a mark Daniel recognized, the same golden pattern that had appeared beneath his feet in the throne room. Arya stepped aside. Place your hand on the mark. Daniel hesitated only for a moment before pressing his palm to the cold surface. The golden lines flared to life, and the gate began to rumble. Slowly, it slid open, revealing a vast chamber filled with shapes, covered in silver cloth. Merak's voice echoed in the stillness. The tools of the first traveler, waiting for the day they would be needed again. Daniel stepped forward, the sound of his own footsteps loud in the silence. Somewhere deep inside, he knew this was the start of something much bigger than himself. The air inside the Vault of Echoes felt different from anywhere Daniel had been before. It was cool and still, as if time itself moved slower here. The walls were made of black stone, but faint lines of gold ran across them in patterns that seemed to shift when he looked too long. Princess Arya stepped forward, her voice low. "Only the royal bloodline and the bonded traveler may enter this place. You are the first outsider to walk here since the age of the first pact." Daniel looked around at the silver-covered shapes scattered through the chamber. Some were tall like towers, others small enough to fit in the palm of a hand. Dust shimmered faintly in the beams of soft light falling from the high ceiling. Merrick moved ahead and stopped beside a large object covered in cloth. With slow care, he pulled the cover away. Underneath was a device unlike anything Daniel had seen. It was shaped like a short pillar, made of dark metal and crystal, with thin golden lines spiraling around it. At its top rested a smooth, round crystal that pulsed faintly as if it were breathing. "This is the Star Key," Merrick said. It was the heart of the first traveler's work. They used it to open hidden paths across the stars and to find the Shadow Fleet's strongholds. "Without it, we would never have won the war." Daniel stepped closer. "And you haven't been able to make it work since?" "No," Merrick admitted. "The Star Key has been silent for centuries. Our best engineers and scholars could not wake it. But the wards say it will respond to the bonded one." Arya's gaze was fixed on Daniel. "This is your first test. If the key responds to you, it will prove to the Council that you are not here by chance." Daniel's pulse quickened. He had no idea how to use something built by a person who had lived hundreds of years ago on a world far from Earth. Still, he knew he had to try. He placed his hands gently on the sides of the Star Key. The surface felt cold at first, then warm, as if it recognized his touch. The faint pulsing in the crystal grew stronger. Daniel closed his eyes. He thought of the strange energy that had taken him from his workshop. He imagined that feeling flowing from his hands into the device. The golden lines along the Star Key lit up, one by one, spiraling toward the crystal at the top. The chamber filled with a soft hum. Suddenly, the crystal flared with bright light. Beams of golden energy shot upward, striking the ceiling. The walls came alive with shifting patterns, forming a vast star map that floated in the air around them. Daniel opened his eyes and stepped back in awe. The map showed countless points of light, each connected by thin golden lines. But one area glowed more brightly than the rest. A cluster of stars marked by a dark shadow, as if something was hiding there. Merrick's voice trembled with excitement. "It is showing us the enemy's hidden base. This is what we have needed for so long." Arya's expression was one of relief and determination. "Now we know where to strike before they grow stronger." Daniel pointed to the shadowed area. "That's them, isn't it?" "Yes," Merrick said. "That is the heart of their fleet. We could never find it before. Now, thanks to you, we can prepare." The map shifted, zooming in on the shadowed region. Strange shapes moved within it, outlines of ships so large they dwarfed anything Daniel had seen in the palace docks. Arya turned to him. "You have given us the key to victory. The Council cannot deny your place here now." Daniel gave a small smile, though his thoughts were heavy. "I'm glad I could help. But this is only the start, isn't it?" "It is," Arya said firmly. "The path to their base will not be easy. The Shadow Fleet will have traps and patrols along the way. We will need a plan, and we will need you with us." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "I can help with strategy and tech, but I've never been in a real battle before." Merrick placed a hand on his shoulder. The first traveler had never fought either. Yet they changed the course of the war. You will learn as they did. Arya stepped closer, her voice steady. "We leave soon. I will assemble a small crew for speed and stealth. You will travel with us aboard the Skyreach, the fastest cruiser in the Dominion. With the Star Key, we will find the base and strike before they can attack." Daniel glanced back at the glowing map. Then I guess I'd better get ready. The star key slowly dimmed, the golden lines fading until the device was quiet again. But now it felt different in the chamber, as if the vault itself knew it had been awakened after centuries of silence. The group covered the device again and made their way back to the shuttle. Daniel looked over his shoulder one last time, at the vault door. He felt as though the place was watching him, silently waiting for his return. As the shuttle lifted off, Arya stood beside him. "You did well today. Many doubted you, but they will see this and understand." Daniel nodded. "Let's hope they're ready for what comes next." Arya's gaze was fixed on the stars ahead. "They will have to be, because the shadow will not wait." The Sky Reach was unlike any ship Daniel had ever seen. Its sleek silver hull gleamed under the pale light of the starport, and its engines hummed quietly as it prepared to leave. Daniel stood on the boarding ramp, watching the vastness of space stretch before him. The stars seemed closer here, brighter and full of secrets. Princess Arya walked beside him, her expression calm but serious. "This mission will test us all. The Shadow Fleet is cunning and dangerous. We must be ready for anything." Daniel nodded, though his stomach churned with nervous energy. He had spent his life building machines, but now he was stepping into a world of real danger. The small crew gathered in the command room. Each member was skilled, chosen for speed, stealth, or knowledge of the enemy. The captain, a tall woman named Sela, gave a sharp report. "We have charts from the star key. The route is clear, but the enemy patrols the borders heavily. Sensors may not detect us until we are very close." Daniel looked at the holographic map floating above the table. The path twisted through asteroid fields and dark nebulae. "We will have to fly carefully." Sela nodded. "Exactly. One wrong. Move, and they will spot us." As the ship lifted off, Daniel felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. Outside the viewport, the planet's surface shrank away, replaced by endless black space. The first hours passed quietly. Daniel spent the time examining the Star Key's data, trying to understand its secrets. The device had shown the location of the enemy's base, but it had not revealed the dangers along the way. Suddenly, alarms blared through the ship. Red. Lights flashed as the captain's voice came over the speakers. "Asteroid storm ahead. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." Daniel grabbed a rail to steady himself as the ship shook. Outside, jagged rocks tumbled through space, illuminated by distant stars. The Sky Reach darted between the rocks, twisting and turning with expert precision. The crew worked in unison, their training clear. Daniel marveled at their skill, but felt the pressure mounting. One mistake would mean destruction. After what felt like an endless dance, the storm passed. The ship's engines settled into a steady hum again. "That was close," Daniel said, wiping sweat from his brow. Sela smiled briefly. "We survived, but it is only the beginning." Days passed as they moved deeper into enemy territory. Strange energy readings flickered across the sensors. Daniel noticed how the shadows in space seemed to stretch and shift oddly, as if hiding something just out of view. One evening, as the ship drifted near a glowing nebula, Daniel was called to the command room. Princess Arya and Merak were already there, studying the Star Key data. "The Shadow Fleet is more organized than we thought," Merak said. "They use the nebula to hide their patrol ships. They know these routes better than we do." Daniel frowned. "Can the Star Key help us find a safe path?" Arya shook her head. "It shows the enemy base, but it cannot see their defenses. We must rely on our own skills and luck." Suddenly, the ship's sensors detected movement. A series of small blips appeared on the screen, closing fast. Sela's voice was tense. "Enemy patrol ships! They have found us!" The crew sprang into action. Daniel watched as the captain took control, ordering the crew to prepare weapons and shields. "Can you help with the ship's systems?" Sela asked quickly. Daniel nodded. I'll try. He moved to a console, fingers flying over controls. He barely understood. The ship's systems were complex, but Daniel's knowledge of machines helped him find weak points and reroute power where needed. The enemy ships fired, bright bolts of energy streaking toward the sky reach. The shields flared, absorbing the attacks, but cracks began to appear. Daniel felt a surge of adrenaline. Shields are weakening. We need to get out of their range. Sela nodded. Preparing for a jump to hyperspace. The ship shook violently as it powered the engines. Daniel held on tightly as the stars stretched into lines of light, and the ship vanished from danger. When the jump ended, the crew sighed in relief. Arya turned to Daniel. You did well. Your quick thinking saved us. Daniel gave a small smile, feeling a new confidence growing. We're not safe yet, but I think we can do this. The journey continued, each day bringing new challenges. Daniel learned more about the ship and the crew. He saw how the people of the Dominion fought not just with weapons, but with hope and trust. One night, as Daniel looked out at the stars, Arya joined him. You have changed since you arrived, she said softly. The bonds of the pact grow stronger. Daniel nodded. I'm starting to believe that maybe I was meant to be here. Arya smiled faintly. Together, we will face the shadow and protect both our worlds. The Skyreach moved onward, faster now, toward the enemy's hidden base. Daniel felt the weight of what was coming, but also the strength of new friendship and purpose. The fate of the Dominion, and perhaps Earth, rested on what they would do next. The Skyreach moved silently through the dark space near the enemy's hidden base. The stars around seemed distant and cold. Daniel stood on the bridge, watching the glowing shapes on the sensors. The Shadow Fleet's stronghold lay just ahead, hidden inside a massive asteroid field. Princess Arya was beside him, her face calm but determined. This is where we make our stand, she said. We cannot let the shadow grow stronger. Daniel nodded. I have never fought in space before, but I want to help. Tell me what to do. The captain, Sela, came forward. We will use the star key to find a secret entrance to their base. It should give us the chance to strike first. The crew prepared for the attack. Weapons charged, shields raised, engines ready. Daniel felt his heart beat faster. This was the moment he had been waiting for. As they moved deeper into the asteroid field, the Skyreach shook from small impacts. Enemy patrol ships fired bursts of energy, but the crew fought back with skill and courage. Suddenly, the star key pulsed brightly. A golden path appeared on the main screen, leading through a narrow gap between two giant asteroids. Follow that. Path! Arya ordered. The ship moved carefully, weaving between the rocks. Daniel helped control the power to the engines, pushing the ship faster but staying on course. Ahead, the entrance to the shadow base came into view. It was a huge cavern, carved into the heart of an asteroid. Red lights flickered along its walls, and massive ships waited inside, ready to defend. The crew held their breath as the Skyreach slipped inside the cavern. Enemy fighters attacked from all sides. Bright beams crossed the blackness as the battle began. Daniel worked quickly at the weapons console, aiming the ship's lasers at the attackers. The shields flashed under heavy fire, but the crew did not falter. Princess Arya stood at the command console, her voice steady. Focus on the base's control center. If we can take it, the Shadow Fleet will lose power. The ship moved deeper, into the cavern. Daniel could see the control center ahead, a large structure glowing with dark energy. Suddenly, a powerful blast hit the Skyreach. Alarms screamed, and the ship rocked violently. We are losing shields, Sela shouted. Daniel pushed buttons, rerouting power to the defenses. Sparks flew from nearby consoles, but he held on. Almost there, Arya called out. Prepare to land. The Skyreach touched down near the control center's entrance. The crew grabbed their gear and moved quickly to the airlock. Daniel felt a mix of fear and excitement. He was far from home, fighting for a world he barely knew, but he was ready. Inside the base, the air was cold and thick. Shadows moved in the dark corridors as the crew advanced. They faced enemy soldiers who fought fiercely, but Daniel and the others pushed forward with courage. Finally, they reached the control room. A giant console filled the space, glowing with pulsing red light. Arya stepped forward and placed her hand on the console. The room shook, and beams of light shot into the sky outside. Daniel worked beside her, using the Star Key's power to unlock the base's systems. Slowly, the dark energy around the base began to fade. Outside, the shadow ships lost power and drifted silently. The battle was turning. Arya smiled at Daniel. "You have helped save the Dominion. The pact is strong again." Daniel felt a deep pride. He had come from Earth by accident, but now he was a part of something greater. As the Sky Reach prepared to leave, Daniel looked at the stars with new hope. He knew that the journey was just beginning, but together with Princess Arya and the people of the Dominion, they could face any challenge. The future was bright.